Welcome to the sound of the start of your weekend. This is the NTT20 betting show sponsored by AK Bets. I'm Ali Maxwell and he's George Elek.
Oh, God, that's weird. This is me and George making betting picks ahead of the EFL weekend. This is very strictly for over 18s only, and gambling comes with risks. So please make sure, if you're watching this, if you're thinking about placing a bet this weekend or anytime, be gamble aware. Head to gambleaware.org to understand in full the risks that come with gambling. George has got a nap this week that'll make your eyebrows fly to the ceiling, and I am looking to repeat what was quite a hot week last week. Bradford nap winner, Accrington double chance at Gills winner at 6-5. The Bradford nap at 17-10. Jata had scored by about 1 o'clock on Saturday, and that was at 11-4. My long shot Barrow Morecambe, it was 0-0 all the way, wasn't it? I needed a 1-0 Barrow win. Instead, it was Morecambe that got the winner. So 3 picks out of 4 that came in for a 6.35 return in terms of points. And unfortunately, George, you had a bagel.
I reckon...
You literally had a bagel for breakfast.
I did.
Having had a bagel last weekend.
Probably not a good omen. I reckon that on all the years we've been doing this show, which is a long time, my long shot of Crawley 0, Shrewsbury 0 has to be the worst ever selection, possibly.
Okay.
We had one, I think, last year where a Nap lost 5-0, which was bad. But I think going for a 0-0 in a game that ends 5-3, it has to be up there with the worst. And I'm going to treat that as the nadir, the low point of the season. It can only get better from here. Rubbish from me last week. A couple of comments on it, which is fair enough. Yeah. You know, got to trust the process. Finished the season in front in the last 2 seasons. I've had bad runs before. Just got to keep plugging away, and hopefully a good run's coming soon.
I've raised my eyebrows in anticipation of this. What's your nap this weekend?
My nap is Cambridge United to beat Wigan at 9-4.
But they
I love the whole trust the process. Then that's the next sentence. Yeah, I think this is
This makes me know that you're sticking to the process, and I like that.
This is a staggering price in my mind.
Yeah,
I really, this is a price that basically takes the league table and Cambridge's results so far this season and Wigan's results so far this season at just total face value. This feels to me like the kind of price you'd have got 10 years ago, before there was such thing as underlying numbers and variance. They didn't even exist.
Variance didn't exist.
No. Well, I mean, it existed, but no one really spoke about it. At least not when I was in my early 20s.
That's how Tony Bloom.
yeah, I know. Well, exactly. That's my point.
Yeah.
So, when these things were edges, where it was just Cambridge are 24th. They played 9 games. They haven't been ahead yet. They've got 1 point. And Wigan are 16th. They've won 3 games. So, obviously they're going to win.
You could tackle from behind. Goalkeepers took their goal kicks long, and this was an edge.
Firstly, that Cambridge are going to win a game soon, regardless of anything else. The teams don't finish seasons on 7 points generally, especially not at League One level. But there is reason, and I think quite persuasive reason, to believe that Cambridge are going to win a game fairly soon, where even though the performances obviously haven't been great, the results have been even worse, they are not a side who are being thumped every week. They are consistently losing really tight games of football. And if we go back to their last home game against Rotherham, it was laid completely bare. Where against a decent side, they lost the game 1-0. Dan and Ndulu missed a massive opportunity at 0-0, 0.53 XG opportunity. And then in the last minute, the ball bounces off a Sam Nombe butt cheek into the back of the net. Right? It's just one of those crazy things. Last time out against Exeter as well. Even though Exeter, probably the better side in the game, but it was a really tight game where, again, Cambridge missed a few opportunities and Exeter scored theirs. In the same way that a few weeks ago we spoke about Gillingham, and I was saying, it's going to end. Gillingham aren't just going to keep clean sheets in every game despite conceding loads of opportunities. In the same way with Cambridge, this is going to end. They are going to post really similar numbers in a game really soon, where it's going to be 1 each in terms of chance creation, in terms of the quality of chance each team are creating, and they're going to win. And they're going to score a goal and the opposition aren't, and then they're going to win a game. Not necessarily because anything improves, but just because they haven't been quite as bad as their bare form suggests they have been. Now, obviously, there are probably mental issues with their run of form, where can we be confident that if they get a lead that they'll hold on to it? We've seen them, their only point so far this season came when they're coming back from 4-1 down against Blackpool to draw 4-4. But in Wigan, they've got an adversary here that I think are kind of perfect for them to play against, where Wigan's attacking output is relatively poor. They're really solid defensively, but Cambridge's defensive, generally this season defensively, have been okay. Like, they don't concede too many chances apart from that 4-4 game. They're not conceding loads of goals in games. They haven't conceded more than 2 goals in a game apart from the 4-4. They've conceded 1 in their last 2 against Exeter and Rotherham. I think they'll restrict Wigan to very, very few chances in this game, and that kind of really drives down the variance within this game, where I'm confident that they'll, even if they lose it, I'm pretty confident, like in other games, they're not going to be blitzed by a Wigan side who generally don't really do that to teams. It's no massive anti-Wigan stance. They're unbeaten since being beaten 2-1 at Birmingham recently, although there have been 4 0-0 draws in their last 5 games, which is, that equates to them not scoring in 4 of the last 5 games or keeping a clean sheet as well. I think this will be a game of few chances, but with Cambridge having home advantage of them being, if you look at the XG ratio over the course of the season as well, they're nowhere near the bottom of the table, and that will be game state will play a part in that. But for them to be 9-4 at home to a Wigan side sitting in 16th, I think just completely fails to appreciate that they just haven't been as bad as their bare results, and that points, if they continue on their current performance level, points are going to come, and I'd have thought a win or 2 will probably come fairly soon too. So I'm really convinced that the 9-4 about them just cannot be a fair reflection on their chance of winning the game.
Just head southeast,
right,
to one of my favourite parts of Essex, Colchester. That's where my nap takes place. It's Colchester to beat Cheltenham 10-11 with AK bets. I strongly believe that Colchester United are better than their results and league position currently suggest. 2 wins, 5 draws and 3 defeats. Been quite a drawy start to the season. At home, it's 2 wins, 2 draws and 1 defeat, and the 1-0 defeat to Harrogate was pretty laughable on the balance of play. They battered them. They created over 2 expected goals, and Harrogate scored when a long punt downfield caused a confusion at the back and led to a tap into an open net from Follerin. So again, in terms of the performance, they were the stronger side in that game. They would win that game many more times than they would lose it. So you can be pretty confident that was the exception. I think that there's been pretty clear progression in performances and just in the kind of settledness, if that's a word, of the starting 11 and the team shape. It's taken a bit of time for Cowley to get this nailed down, and there have been quite a few absences, little injuries here and there that have kept people out for a few weeks, but I think he's now starting to nail it down. And what we can say pretty definitively, given that Colchester have taken the most shots on target in League 2 this season, is that they are a goal threat, much more than they have been in the last few years. They are a big set-piece threat. They are a big threat in transition, particularly with Samson Tavide, who looks like he's made a nice little jump up this season and is much more consistent, looking very dangerous in the last few weeks. And he's got a good foil for him in Lyle Taylor, who's now fit. And as we know, as a finisher at this level, very, very good. Him and Tavide, for me, are a good match on paper. And so far on the pitch, it looks that way too. Then they've got Jack Payne, who I think has probably been one of the best players in League 2 so far this season. He has created the most chances in the league from open play and created the most chances in the league from set pieces. So combined, he is miles clear in terms of creative force in League 2. And they're a good attacking team. Now, Cheltenham come to town with the worst away record in the league so far. 1 draw and 4 defeats, 1 point from 5 games. They've lost 7 of their 11 League 2 games this season. The ones that they win, I think, start to paint a picture of this Cheltenham team. They've beaten Newport and Harrogate and Accrington all at home, all teams who have been either very poor this season and or very poor away from home specifically. They've beaten them all by 1 goal and all with winning goals in the last 10 minutes of games. So tight games that they've nabbed at the death. But against pretty much everyone else, they have been really poor, particularly away from home. I don't really have faith in Mike Flynn to be able to turn things around in this situation, and that's based on previous evidence. His Swindon spell ended with 10 defeats in 16, 3 wins and 3 draws in that time. His Walsall tenure ended after 1 win in 20, with 12 draws and 7 defeats. Flynn seems to find it difficult to get his teams out of a rut, and I think after that defeat to Swindon last weekend, it is feeling a little rutty at Cheltenham. 93 away fans made the trip to Barrow. It's a long old way. I can't imagine too many more will be motivated to watch this team play against Colchester. So if things continue to fester, I want to be with Colchester. That's my next. That's my nap. 10 to
So
11.
nap, yeah.
That's my nap. 10 to 11. Next best.
My next best is Bromley to beat Tranmere Rovers at 13-10. Bromley made a really good start to life in League Two, winning their first 2 games, including a 2-0 home win against AFC Wimbledon, which is obviously aged pretty well. But they followed that up with a 2-1 defeat to Crewe, when I think we double napped them and you were there, and they were 1-0 up, and they conceded twice late on. But recent signs, I would say, have been pretty good. Since going down 1-0 at Grimsby in mid-September, they've faced 3 teams in MK Dons, Chesterfield and Fleetwood, and they've drawn all 3 of them, which I think is a pretty good return for a side recently promoted out of the National League through the playoffs. 2 of these were at home. In particular, they're impressive against Chesterfield, where they took the lead and then were pegged back to 2-1 before scoring just after half-time, and then had a couple of opportunities to win the game but couldn't take them. But the way their fixtures have fallen so far this season has been pretty tough, I would say, where they've faced a lot of good sides already over the campaign so far. And in Tranmere, I say it's the first team that they played at home who are pretty poor. I mean, I know Crewe came into that game not in good form, but like the mood around Tranmere, their totally inept attacking performances, the staleness in possession. I think the way that Bradford in your nap last weekend beat Tranmere basically gives Andy Woodman and Bromley a blueprint as to how to do it, and they will be very happy to do it, which is effectively sit in, let Tranmere have it and spring them and try and dominate from set pieces. I think Bromley are a side who are maybe better than their initial league table league position suggests that they are, partly because of the acclimatisation, I guess, within the league, partly because they've had a very tough fixture list so far, and I think they are kind of just a better team. I'm pretty surprised. Like, you mentioned that I don't disagree with you about Colchester.
Thank you.
But I'm surprised that Colchester are 10-11 to win that game and Bromley are 13-10 to win this. Like, it feels to me like the kind of gap between the two sides, or from what we've seen so far, is comparable. Yeah, with Bromley, you're getting a much bigger price. Maybe it's a bit of snootishness still about their pedigree. So yeah, I'm very keen to back Bromley. I think getting against Tranmere until we have any reason not to looks like a pretty good way to play this. They've only scored 1 goal away from home this season, and that came in a 1-1 draw at MK Dons a couple of weeks ago, being beaten by Gillingham, being beaten 3-0 by Colchester. Oh, and I forgot they did beat Carlisle away from home 2-1 early in the campaign. But again, that's a bit of form that at the time looked quite impressive.
Omari Patrick was highly motivated that day playing against his former side.
And Carlisle are now rooted to the bottom of the league. So, Tranmere a team to get against. I think Bromley a team to get with. They play each other this weekend, and at 13-10, I think is a good opportunity to back Bromley.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm at 10-11 again for my next best. Not the juiciest prices for my nap and next best this weekend, but sometimes that's the way that the cookie crumbles. Birmingham 10-11 to beat Lincoln. This basically boils down to how much better I think Birmingham are to most teams in their division, and how I think as the season progresses, these sorts of prices won't be available for Birmingham City to win in most of their matches. I want to take advantage of that while there still maybe are a few question marks around, a few question marks that you've touched on. They haven't been, despite incredible results, before that defeat to Charlton last time out, they hadn't been absolutely pure Manchester City level of dominance, despite playing in a style that is reminiscent and trying to achieve that sort of control over games as a team like Man City or another elite level team. But they had still been able to win a lot of football matches, and I think a large part of that is the depth of quality that they have mean that the pressure is kept on significantly throughout the whole game, and if anything is more intense in the last half an hour. If you've already spent an hour keeping them at bay, well, they can bring on some exceptional players, and they've probably tired you out quite a lot with their 68% possession or whatever it is right now. Now, Lincoln, the home side and a good side, unbeaten in 7 in the playoff places at the moment, strong defensively, strong from counter-attacks and set pieces. I do see them as one of the sort of best of the rest in League One, outside of the maybe 4 or 5 teams that I perceive to be really, really strong. But they are a team that consistently seem to do their best work picking up points against the lesser lights in the division, and they do struggle seemingly against the top teams, Lincoln. So this season against teams in the top half, they've only played 4 teams in the top half, 1 win, 2 draws, 1 defeat. But last season against the very top teams, well, Lincoln finished 7th, so we can look at the top 6. They didn't score at home against any of the top 5, and their overall record, home and away, against the top 6 teams, 2 wins, 3 draws, 7 defeats. So pretty clear, I think, evidence that Lincoln are a very impressive team who operate really well and who are doing well this season. But I still think there's a level above them that they're struggling to reach in terms of how they play against the kind of division's leading lights. And that might be down to them not being able to have the strength and depth and like proven peak age quality of these teams. They're a very young side, and they clearly find it very difficult. The game's going to be very straightforward tactically. This is the team with the highest possession number against the lowest possession team. So even though Lincoln are at home, I think they'll be more than happy without the ball here. Birmingham are going to be the ones to make the play, shall we say. And so, of course, we're a bit worried about counterattacks. McCarmer and Draper and House are good counter-attacking strikers. We're a bit worried about set pieces as well, because Birmingham have conceded quite a few goals from set pieces. But I'm more interested in all the ways that Birmingham are going to make it difficult for Lincoln and why they're going to find it difficult. Birmingham are going to have so much of the ball, so much territory. They've worked on quite a lot of attacking patterns, I imagine, over the international break. And with the individual quality that they have, whether it's Alfie May, Stansfield, Dykes off the bench, whether it's in the attacking midfield and wide areas, Williamson, Hansen, Scott Wright, Keshi Anderson, whether it's Paik and Iwata in the double pivot, or Mark Leonard if he plays. Iwata's a good example of someone who I think has made a massive difference for Birmingham, because although we focus on the attacking players, he's already scored 2 goals from 20 yards, one with his right foot, one with his left foot. And if you have those sorts of players who can be a threat from the edge of the box while you've got so many men inside the box, it just makes you a really sort of 3-dimensional attack. So if Birmingham do go ahead and get an early goal here, I think Lincoln are going to find it very hard to kind of punch back. And so given that I'm confident Birmingham would score the first goal, or be highly likely to, I think the 10-11 about them to win the game is fair. That's my next best. The fourfold for the Naps and the next best, if you were to build it on the AK Bets website, would be around 26-1. If you did that, signing up today with promo code NTT100, you can click the link in the description to apply that code immediately. Then, if your first bet is an accumulator on football with a minimum of 4 selections, AK Bets will boost the profit gained on that initial bet by 25% in the form of a free bet up to a value of £100. Further T's and C's accessible on the website. That's promo code NTT100. Do check out the link in the show notes. Who's your goal scorer?
Morgan Whittaker.
Oh, nice.
He's 100-30 to score any time for Argyle at Cardiff. A few reasons for this. Firstly, Cardiff under Omar Eatser have been very different to what we've normally seen with Cardiff, in that they're defensively looked pretty poor, which isn't that rare. But from an attacking, the way they're approaching games, I'd say, is more attack minded, and that should cause for a pretty end-to-end game here. Argyle have clearly had massive struggles on the road this season and prior to this season as well, with I think just 1 point taken so far. Having said that, the fixture just hasn't really helped them their last 2 away games. Basically, since they turned their form around in a 3-2 win over Sunderland, they've won all 3 home games, scoring 3-3 and 2 against Sunderland, Luton and Blackburn. They've had 2 away games in the middle of that, but they came up against West Brom and Burnley, who are 2 of the best defensive sides in the whole league, and lost both of them 1-0. So I don't think we can massively judge their attacking output as being totally different at home and away, because I don't think we've seen them come up against kind of a level opponent yet. And I think in Cardiff they've got an opponent here who they can really get at. Even if they don't, Argyle were a poor team last season who just about stayed up in the Championship. And Morgan Whittaker scored 19 goals, all from open play. So he's got 2 already this season. Looking at his shot map, there are some concerns in my mind that he's not getting into as good positions as the season before, where even though he's someone whose long-range shooting is obviously really good, if you actually look at his shot map from last season, it's actually really impressive how many of them were from close range and how clinical he was with shots kind of centrally in the box. He's not really getting to those areas so far, albeit the one shot he's had in kind of central areas inside the box this season, he did score with that header against Blackburn.
I noticed with the average positions from their last game that Sissoko, the left winger, was like basically the furthest forward player on the pitch in terms of where he was getting touches.
Yeah.
Whittaker was really withdrawn and quite deep there.
Yeah.
And I imagine quite a clear message over the international break would be like, Morgan, mate, don't worry too much about getting on it on the halfway line. We need you nearer the goal.
And despite that, he's still having, as we always know he does, absolutely loads of shots. He's had 31 shots already this season.
He loves it.
Jack Anakin goal, I wouldn't say is someone who I'd necessarily perceive as a particularly good shot stopper. Like, it's quite a good keeper to have when you're having this bet. Joel Bagan, the Cardiff left back, who is a decent defensive left back. He's someone that, if you're going to make a list of left backs, you think Morgan Whittaker can probably terrorise, he'd be relatively high up there. So, I mean, I need to see more from Argyle on the road to be confident that they're going to be, a good side. I wouldn't be rushing to back them necessarily within this game, although I'd rather back them at the kind of 11-4 that they are rather than Cardiff at even money. But I think given the way that Cardiff set up and the fact that Whittaker has got a proven track record over the last couple of years of being a consistent goal scorer, and I think we can be fairly confident. Like, it would be strange in my mind if Whittaker doesn't get opportunities within this game. I think 100-30 about him getting on the score sheet is a really strong goal scorer pick this week.
Lovely. My goal scorer pick is Sunderland's Romain Mundle, 4-1 anytime, top price with AK Bets. This game's on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. Should be a lovely one to watch on the sofa or maybe in the bath as the days grow shorter. The baths
get longer.
Oh, well, no, they're always the exact same length. No. 45 minutes.
Oh, the baths get deeper.
Yeah, the baths become more frequenter. I might be in the bath watching this, so there's an image for you. Romain Mundle, I think he might score. I certainly think 4-1 is a good price for him to do so. What a breakout star he's been in the Championship this season. Out the shadow of Jack Clarke. Didn't start the first 2 games. Clarke was still around. Has since started 7 games in a row. Has played 85 minutes or more in 6 of those 7. So he's a sturdy operator. He doesn't need whipping off after 60 minutes like some of the more flimsy attacking players you might come across. He has scored already in 3 of 7 games this season. He has had a shot on target in every game this season. He's been excellent when it comes to carrying Sunderland up the pitch. And he's a big outlet on the left side. Now, that's important because when I think of the last time Hull played, they lost 4-0 to Norwich City and they struggled with Norwich's left-sided attacker, Borja Sainz, who scored, I think he scored 2 goals, or he certainly scored 1 and missed a 1-on-1. They seem to be struggling with that sort of out-to-in run. And I think that while I actually think Louis Coyle's a very underrated fullback at this level, I'm not sure he gets a lot of help from the winger Bellumi at the moment. And I think Sunderland's left side of Sirkin overlapping Mundle is really dangerous. I also think Sunderland, at best this season on the break against a Hull team who, particularly when they're at home, they are trying to be very aggressive, out of possession, high line, committing bodies in attack. And I think that means they leave themselves vulnerable to counter-attacks. We've seen it already against Leeds, who scored 2 against them, against Sheffield United, who scored 2 on the break against them, 4 against Norwich last week. The very top teams are picking Hull off with lightning-quick attacks, and that's what Sunderland have proven to be very strong at this season. I expect Mundle to be the one that receives the ball on the left side of attacks with Roberts or Rigg or whoever having carried it up the pitch. And I think he's the one that has license to get shots off. So excited to watch this game on Sunday afternoon. Mundle for me at 4-1 for Sunderland anytime. It's time for the long shot. And talking of long shots, George, yesterday at the Sport Parkinson's Charity Golf Day at the Belfry, you won the longest drive competition.
I did. It was really exciting.
Partly
cool. Because there are quite a lot of professional sportsmen or ex-pros who were playing in the event. In my 4-ball with Dave and John, who are lovely guys, was Ben Morgan, who played 30 times for England Rugby as a number 8.
One of the biggest human beings I've ever met.
Hit the ball a long way.
I bet.
And you told me before we went out for the round that longest drive was on 4. So I stood in the third tee loosey-goosey, wasn't even thinking about it. Hit a lovely drive. Ben, who I was playing with, I think saw my lovely drive and saw it as a challenge and tried to hit the ball so hard in retaliation and topped it and lost his ball that went about 20 yards left. So that was nice. But also getting up on stage in the gala dinner in a room full of like 18 stone ex-professional rugby players and winning longest drive was up there and one of the coolest things I've ever done.
Yeah.
Me holding the bag aloft of my head, probably one of the least cool things I've ever done.
Yeah, Alan McAnally was there as well. You beat him. And Ali Maxwell, who did know what hole it was on, did know that you were already the longest drive, did try and smoke the ball to Middle Earth and pulled it left into the trees. So it just shows it's mental as much as anything else. You seem to think that if you'd known what hole it was on, you might have...
100%.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But we were there to support Sport Parkinson's, which is an absolutely incredible charity. I've learned a lot about Parkinson's over the last few years since we've been attending this amazing event. We're very fortunate to know Charlie Appleyard, who is a director at Morecambe, and he is the man that runs this incredible event and this incredible charity. And George, it's always an amazing day. It's always a very sort of affecting and touching day in an entirely positive way, because for me, coming from a position where I don't have any familial experience of Parkinson's, for example, and therefore didn't know a huge amount outside of very surface level stuff, one thing that's, I think, really important to know, and for everyone to know, is that it can affect young people as well. And by that I mean a number of the guys that we played with yesterday were diagnosed in their 30s, in their 40s. It is absolutely not something that affects only elderly people. But also, I want to say that if anyone is affected or touched by Parkinson's in any way, this charity is incredible. And it's so clear from talking to those who are involved with Sport Parkinson's what benefit they get, both on a physical and a mental level, from being involved with the charity.
For sure. I think that the community aspect of it, and ensuring that people who are going through the really tough ride that is Parkinson's, that could, the symptoms and how it can manifest can vary from person to person. The community aspect of it is so important. And, Dave, I played with yesterday, met his girlfriend, who's also got Parkinson's, through the charity. And it's that communal, the community where people can support each other and share their experiences together. The work that they do is incredible, and also just encouraging people with Parkinson's to be active and keeping active, and that they can play golf and other activities. So it's a really special thing that we do. There's a lot of special people, and absolutely loved it.
Sportparkinsons.com. Do take a look if you think that it would be worthwhile for yourself or for anyone that you know who might be impacted by Parkinson's. What is your long shot this week on the Betting Show?
Well, interestingly, because you mentioned Charlie Appleyard, who runs Sport Parkinson's, who is a director at Morecambe. Coincidentally, my long shot is Morecambe to win 0 against MK Dons at 13-2. Now, before I get to my reasoning, I've got something to say about the long shot.
Great.
Because I've had, it's been a tough season for me on the Betting Show so far. I'm hoping it's going to turn, but no getting away from that. But I've had a couple of messages from people who seem to not understand the concept of a long shot, who don't understand what it means to put something up as a long shot. So I just want to kind of clarify what we're trying to do here, because the long shot, by definition, we have said has to be 4-1 or longer. 4-1 in percentage terms is a 20% chance of something happening. Right. So all we're saying by putting something up on the long shot is we think that the chance of this happening is higher than the odds suggest. So when I put up Wrexham Northampton and BTTS at 10-1, so the perceived odds of less than 10%, that isn't me saying I think Northampton are going to win this game and both teams are going to score. That's me saying I think the chances of this happening is higher than 10%. And I'd almost argue that the fact that the game was 1-1 after 40 minutes and Northampton had chances at 1-1 probably means that I might have been right, even though the game finished 4-1. So just, a bit of a comunicado oficial there about our long shots.
Yeah, it's way more fun and interesting for us if you guys tweet us about our picks before the matches have happened.
For sure.
It's not necessarily a fair fight to, after the result has been confirmed, fire back. That's not to say that there can be no possible issues with our picks. No, but I just think if you ever... I guess what I'm asking is...
If you think we're idiots, tell us early.
Yeah, if you listen to the show and you think a pick is really bad, I'd really like to hear from you.
Get in the comments now and tell us why.
Because that's way more fun.
I agree.
That's what the game is. That's what we're trying to do, is we're making predictions. And I think if you strongly disagree, you're making a prediction of your own. And it's only really a fair fight if we both make the same prediction. If you set your stall out before the game actually kicks off.
Let's do battle. All right. Saying?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
What's the worst pick this week and why? Get your answers in before 3 p.m. on Saturday.
So Morecambe to win 2-0 at home to MK Dons. MK Dons have been beaten 2-0 at home already 3 times this season. AFC Wimbledon, Salford and Colchester all beating them 2-0. So Wimbledon obviously a very good side. Salford and Colchester, two sides that have struggled for a lot of this season so far. We last saw MK at home to Donny, and they really struggled to create anything. Things may improve under Scott Lindsay, but we're yet to see it yet. And in Morecambe, they come up against a side where, in the same way that I spoke about Cambridge earlier, I am absolutely convinced that Morecambe are not as bad as their league position suggests that they are. And at home this season, they've drawn 3 of their 5 home games. So they've drawn 2 of their 4 home games so far this season. They drew against Notts County, they drew against Bradford, and they drew against Colchester, losing to Gillingham and Newport, but only lost those games 1-0. Yet to be beaten by more than a solitary goal, and have already played 8 of the top 10. So there are loads of reasons why Morecambe's season started poorly. But they're a side who last time out went to Barrow, a team that have been superb this season, and they won that game 1-0. That's their first win of the season and should give them massive belief. In terms of their defensive unit, the 2-1 defeat against Accrington was one of their worst defensive performances this season, but they've come up against loads of really good teams and haven't really been broken down consistently, just conceding the one goal. So with MK Dons struggles in front of goal and struggles to make things click this season, coupled with a buoyant Morecambe who have gone toe-to-toe with loads of good sides and drawn or beaten one of them, or come away just with marginal defeats against others. I think this is way tighter than the odds suggest, and I would be surprised if MK go to Morecambe and do what they did to Harrogate and score 5. I think if Morecambe are going to win this, which I think there's a fair chance they do, it'll be a low-scoring game where they edge ahead like it was on Saturday. So at 13-2, I'm very willing to take a chance. I'm not sitting here saying I think this is going to happen, but I think in terms of the probability, it's, in my mind, more likely than the 13-2 suggests it is. So therefore, it's my long shot.
Mine is Norwich and both teams to score yes at Stoke on Saturday at 4-1 with AK bets. The shortest of the long shots, 4-1. The Narcisse Pelach derby, as many are calling it. Norwich have been good, haven't they, recently?
Yeah.
Yes. In the 5-game stretch between international breaks, 10 points, scored the most goals in the league, attacking really, really, really well, quickly, with quality, great coaching, players thriving, really fun to watch. But not only that, I think a lot of it starts with the back four. I've been so impressed with the fullbacks Fisher and Doyle, with the centre-backs Cordoba and Duffy, looking like a really strong group at the back, both in terms of the defensive side of the game, but in particular, the way that they are starting and helping Norwich generate attacks. They've seemingly got to a new level, Norwich, and it's really exciting to see what happens in the next stretch of 6 games, I think it is, until the next international break. Now, most of their big wins so far have been at home. They have won 2 out of 4 away from home, beating Derby with the help of the assistant referee not calling the ball out when it was, and they beat Coventry as well. Now, in the same chunk of 5 games, Stoke have the 3rd worst XG for and the 3rd worst XG against in the Championship, which is especially surprising when you consider that within that group of 5 games was a 6-1 win against Portsmouth, and that very much sticks out like a sore thumb because the other performances and results have been poor in that time. It's worth pointing out that there was a big change. Obviously, the shock sacking of Stephen Schumacher 1 game after the international break means that Pelach came into a busy schedule. He will have had some very valuable training time in the last week or 2, and there is clearly a chance that Stoke look bang at it, look much more understanding of what he's trying to get them to do. They might look significantly better for the time off and for his time spent on the training pitch. He also knows Norwich pretty well, as he was a first-team coach, and Stoke poached him from there. So there is a little bit of uncertainty here. I think that both teams to score angle is interesting because, I mean, his last lineup was incredibly attacking, Narcisse, or Chicho. He included Bay, Moran, Kumas, Gallagher and Cannon, who I would consider all 5 very attack-minded players. Really exciting selection, but I think they are quite flimsy at the back. So I think Norwich, if they attack to their capabilities that they've shown in the last couple of weeks, should be able to pierce Stoke City's backline quite a few times, but I do think Stoke have the chance to hurt them at the other end. Hence, Norwich and BTTS yes at 4-1 in the Chicho derby. We finish off with an under 2.5 quad at 10-1. This is backable on the special section of the football section of the AK Bets website. They've already built it for you, so you don't need to do so yourself. And there are 4 selections. Take it away.
My first one is a game I've already covered in my nap. Cambridge against Wigan, for the reasons mentioned. Wigan's attacking output has been relatively poor so far this season. Cambridge, despite their poor results, don't tend to concede loads of chances, and obviously haven't been scoring many in front of goal. So it feels like a low-scoring game to me, which hopefully benefits the selection of Cambridge to win the game as well. But I think under 2.5 is also a way to play it. And in League Two, Crewe against Salford. Ever since that 5-0 defeat at home to Chesterfield, Lee Bella's done everything he can to change Crewe and make sure they are more defensively solid. And it's kind of worked. That only 2 games since then have gone over 2.5. Both only had 3 goals. Having watched Salford last week, in a game where there were 3 goals fairly early, I still think Salford, from an attacking point of view, are really lacking right now. They're taking a lot of shots from distance. And Crewe aren't necessarily the most fluent attacking side, but are relatively solid. And I fancy them to win the game as well. They're probably next on the list in terms of NAP and NB. So, unders at Crewe and unders at Cambridge.
Been doing some networking while you talk through that. Someone called Beverly added me on LinkedIn and said, "Hi Ali, you've popped up on my LinkedIn feed a few times, so I thought I'd connect." That's just how business gets done.
What do I, Bev?
As I understand it. Blackburn v Swansea is one of my picks for under 2.5 goals. 7 of 9 Swans games have gone under so far this season. Very much fits how I see their games going. Relatively slow tempo in the main. Not a very high shot count in the main. They have the lowest total goals per game in the Championship. And they go to a Blackburn side who had a hot start, did they not? It slowed down a bit. And anyone who subscribes to the theory of underlying numbers won't be hugely surprised that their incredibly hot conversion rate early on in the season has slightly normalised, shall we say, dropped down a level. They're actually in the bottom 8 in the Championship, 4 XG per 90. So still a bit of work to do in terms of consistent chance creation. They're going to try and engineer quick turnovers and quick transition attacks against this Swansea team that like having the ball. But I find this hard to imagine being a big old shot fest. So Blackburn Swans under 2.5 goals. And the same for Notts County against Wimbledon in League 2. Now, it's quite a good price, this, because, well, it's because Notts County home games tend to be incredibly goalsy. However, I think what is stronger than goalsy Notts is how damn good Wimbledon are out of possession and their approach to away games in particular. Their shape is exceptional. They have really strong defensive personnel, and their defensive data away from home is the best in League 2. All 4 of their away games so far this season have been unders because they really do struggle to score goals away from home, it's fair to say. Last season in League 2, Wimbledon had the lowest total goals per game in away matches. 15 of 23 went unders. So you've got the sort of irresistible force against immovable object. I think immovable object is the stronger thread here on which we pull. Without Jody Jones, I do think Notts, while they still have some very good players like Crowley, McGoldrick, Jatta, they are lacking a little bit of X factor. And so I would be confident that Wimbledon can turn this into a pretty low margin, low scoring game. So Notts County and Wimbledon are my 2 selections. Add to that your selections of Cambridge, Wigan and Crewe, Salford, and you've got a 10-1 under 2.5 goals, 4-fold. Blackburn, Swansea, Cambridge, Wigan, Crewe, Salford and Notts against Wimbledon. Now I've got to go do a bit more LinkedIn networking. Why don't you recap your selections?
My nap is Cambridge to beat Wigan at 9-4. Next best, Bromley to beat Tranmere at 13-10. Morecambe to win to nils. My long shot against MK Dons at 13-2. And more than Morgan Whittaker, is 100-30 to score any time for Argyle at Cardiff.
Colchester 10-11. My nap. Birmingham 10-11. My next best. My goal scorer's name is Romain Mundell 4-1. Anytime for Sunderland against Hull. Norwich and BTTS at 4-1 in Stoke against Norwich. And the 4-fold under 2.5 goals. Blackburn, Swansea, Cambridge, Wigan, Crewe, Salford and Notts, Wimbledon. Thank you for listening to the show. Thanks to AK Bets for sponsoring it. Be back again on Monday with a recap of the weekend. Cheers. Go well.